Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. I'm your host, Amanda, and my amazing co-host is...
Hello, I'm Megan.
Hey, hey. All right, so if you're new here, you have stumbled upon us during one of our book club episodes, but don't panic. There was no assignment to be here. We read the book, and we come share our thoughts every Thursday.
Yes, we do. So you could read along with us. Some of our listeners do. This book is a pretty epic one. We might recommend that you do that, but it certainly isn't a requirement, and we don't judge if you don't. So come as you are, hang out, take what serves you. All that is good. Beyond not judging, a bit more about what you can expect from us here at Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. We are a secular and progressive homeschool bunch. I didn't realize until this year's political chaos how divided even secular spaces were. I don't know, maybe very naively thought that most secular spaces leaned progressive, but that has turned out not to be the case this year, right? So in case there's any doubt, we loudly affirm that Black Lives Matter, that no human is illegal on stolen land, that our bodies are our freaking bodies, and mind your own business about what we do with them. And so much more. Like everything that you can think of that relates to that philosophy, that's where we are.
Yeah, for sure. So if that all sounds like music to your ears, welcome. We're so glad you found us. It can be super, super hard to find secular and progressive spaces in the homeschool world, but we do exist. So now, onto our book club. We are currently reading Debbie Reber's book, Differently Wired. In fact, we just interviewed Debbie Reber, and that episode aired last week. So if you missed it, you should totally go back just a couple episodes in our queue and find it. It was definitely awesome to be able to talk with her and hear her take on neurodiversity and so much of what is going on in that world and that space, right?
Absolutely. So today we will be attempting to discuss tilts 8, 9, and 10 in our book. I say attempting because we never quite seem to finish what we set out to lately. There's a ton of meat in this book. And each week we've said, okay, we're going to cover 3 tilts, right? Like 8, 9, and 10. But the last few weeks we've only gotten to 2. And I'm going to tell you right now, I have a hard stop when we hit the 1 hour mark in our recording because Amanda and I are currently 9 hours apart time zone wise in the world. And I have a shaky Wi-Fi situation where I am right now, which means I am recording at 4 a.m. my time to make sure that there's fewer people on the Wi-Fi. And so I'm like, by the time we've hit the 1 hour mark, it'll be 5 a.m. and I'll be like, well, we're mid chapter, but I'm done. So have a nice week. So let's dive in and maybe we will get through 3 tilts. We shall see.
Yeah.
So tilt 8 is called Create a World Where Your Child Can Be Secure. And each chapter kind of has like a subheading and then a quote. There's a quote here from JFK, all good. But the meat of the chapter starts off with a quote that says, imagine being a child going through life in a constant state of stress, et cetera, et cetera. I just like that first part. Imagine being a child, full stop. I think that so much of the disparity between parents and their children or adults and children is just that thing of forgetting what it is to be a kid, forgetting what it is to be insecure, depending on the age, right? The hormone cocktail that's going on at some points in time, the lack of autonomy that so many kids have over their own existence, and how frustrated we would be as human beings if we had that little control over our day-to-day existence. And so I just liked that thing, like imagine being a child, right? It's always that like put yourself in someone else's shoes. Imagine being a child. Their existence is so tied to the whims of other people and the direction of other people. And that's got to be so frustrating. And then when they express that frustration, sometimes in a really cohesive, well thought out statement, other times in like a full blown nuclear implosion, because that's what they've got available to them. Mm-hmm. Then when the implosion side occurs, it's like they're in trouble or they get reprimanded or they've been grounded or whatever. And it's like, they're just trying to tell you, like, I am completely out of control of my own existence in this world, right? Like, help. And then they've ended up in trouble for it. So that's it. Imagine being a child.
Okay. Well, just right after that, she says, quote, Studies show that to be effective learners and to take the kind of risks necessary for healthy growth, children need to feel safe, secure, and supported. And for me, that was just that little quote was one of those like, it's nothing new. I know it, but it really kind of hit home for me. And it really made me think about the fact that before I sent my kiddo off to brick and mortar school, I was really concerned about whether or not I had bolstered him enough, made sure that he had the self confidence necessary to be able to stay true to himself against the bullies and just a world in general that I knew wouldn't be prepared to fully accept him just the way he is. And I just think that's really sad. I think a lot of people feel that way and have those concerns. And looking back, it really makes me think like, why was I so sure that I should send him into that world if I knew that it wasn't going to accept him just the way he is at 5, 6, 7, even at 11, 12, 13, right? Like, why am I sending a kid who is still a kid and has so much growing and developing and becoming to achieve and accomplish? Like, why am I pushing them out there in a world that's not going to embrace them just the way they are?
We have to toughen them up, Amanda. I mean, come on.
Mhm. Yeah. Or hope. Yeah. Well, yeah. We'll just, yeah. Exactly. Okay. So,
I'm with you on that.
right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. Like, I almost went there, but we're not going to use those words because we really don't want the podcast like bleeped out because we were talking about the wrong things or something. Right. So,
I will say though, we had a babysitter years ago who regularly, not regularly like weekly, but like every once in a while will post stuff about their experience, and they were bullied mercilessly in high school to the point that police got involved and it was a whole thing. And they are a trans adult, and he posted a quote that said like, it's that thing, I'm sure you've seen it float around where it's like the things that didn't kill you made you stronger or whatever. And it was like, I didn't need to be stronger. I needed to be safe, or I needed to feel loved. That's not what I needed in that moment, you know? And it's funny because sometimes I'll post stuff about homeschooling, and ironically, his mom can sometimes get nasty with me about homeschooling. And I'm like, I think it's that thing. It's that defense mechanism of like, this is what happened to your child in school and how detrimental it was. And I'm like, I didn't say I never went on there and like tagged you and was like, I think you're a shit mother for sending your kid to school. Like, you did the best you could with what you had. Like, I'm not doubting what you did and that you love your child and all that. Like, why are you getting so feisty with me just because I say I love homeschooling? Like, yeah, it's like they need to feel safe and secure there. We don't need to send them out there to be toughened up for the world, right? I mean,
yeah.
they're kids.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah. And a lot of this episode is kind of around, or this tilt rather, it's kind of around. On the next page on 157, I just thought it was funny. I made a note because we had just done a whole episode a couple weeks ago about structure and whether or not it's needed. And then here's this story in here about how her child really craved structure and how it allows him to feel secure and calm and more in control. And that's the thing, right? Some people don't need structure, and some people really do significantly better with structure. And so much of homeschooling is just that, like taking the time to figure out what you actually need and doing it for the right reasons, not because someone told you you needed to do it.
So then I have the next note, which is on page 158, and it's in a section called The Gifts of Security. And it says, when a child is moving through the world differently, they are often all too aware that they don't quite fit in, which frequently results in their being stuck in fight or flight mode. But when parents commit to creating an environment where their child can let down their defenses, there's no limit to their growth. And I've talked in previous episodes about how that was 1000% the case for my oldest kid. But from this, I just thought like, it is exhausting to exist in fight or flight mode. And then it makes it really hard to learn. And so if you're homeschooling and you're looking for your kid to be growing and excelling in math and writing and all the things that you're covering, when you're in fight or flight mode, so much of your energy is going to that thing that it makes it really hard to be able to make good choices, to be able to learn, to be able to get enough sleep, to be able to function the next day, like all of that stuff. So this is just beyond like the touchy feely of like, oh, wouldn't it be great if kids were happy and secure and supported, which should be reason enough alone. But even if it's not for certain people, then knowing that like that's a really unhealthy existence to live in so many ways.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I have that same quote. She goes on in that exact same quote. She continues by saying, "We want to ensure their home environment is a place where they feel safe, secure, seen, and accepted for who they are." And again, it's that like it shouldn't be anything new. It shouldn't be groundbreaking, but it's so important that if we're going to take this step, especially in homeschooling, but just in parenting with differently wired kids, like we have to be their safe space where they're fully accepted for who they are. They're seen and, just really, we have to be that place.
Mhm.
Okay, so on the next page, 160, new section, it's called Develop Stress Coping Strategies. And she's just talking about like just remembering to focus on the things that work and then finding things together, right? Again, this idea of collaborating, a partnership with your kiddo, find things that help in stressful situations, and then reminding your kiddo before you head into a situation where you know some of these triggers might come up of like, hey, how are we going to deal with this? Or, hey, this thing might happen. How would you like me to help you deal with it? And it's one of those like, again, I feel like a lot of this tilt isn't groundbreaking new stuff, but it's stuff that like we kind of forget in the like you're doing things, right? You're busy doing the day-to-day things and you're just like, oh, we got to get to this and we've got to go do this. And like, okay, come on, we're running late. We've got to hurry. And then you forget to take that step back and do these things that are ultimately going to make it all go much smoother and more timely and all of that. And if you just take in those 5 minutes to stop and take a breath and have this quick conversation, the whole thing probably would have unfolded a lot better.
I know I'm the idiot that sometimes it takes like 2 or 3 times for the shit to really hit the fan before I realize like I need to better prepare for this exact situation that continues to come up, right? Like, you know, going through airport security is one for my youngest kid. And now it's like, before we get there, we have a whole pep talk before we get to security. And it's like, but how many times did it have to go poorly for me to finally figure, like, just to remember? Because the airport is stressful for everybody. Like, you're rushing and you're trying to make sure you don't lose papers, bags, kids. So you're just like moving through the thing. And then now I'm like, no, we need to stop and have a whole pep talk before we get to security so that you're ready to walk in there feeling confident. So yeah, I know. But half the time it takes me way too many bad instances before I remember to put a practice into place.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so then on 162, there's a new section. It's ensure that home is a safe space. And, you know, we're just giving you the highlights here, but she has some bullet points of like how to do that, like create a cozy space. That might be comfy seating, it might be a blanket that feels good, whatever that is, favorite water bottle, a cozy space that they can go. Create family rituals for fun and bonding. Maybe it's a game night. Maybe it's a special show you watch together. Maybe it's a walk that you like to take or your family likes to hike or, whatever that is, these kind of family rituals that they can count on and that really kind of fill their cup, right? And hopefully yours as well. And then foster morning and bedtime routines that help your child begin and end their day feeling regulated, calm, and loved. And I know we definitely have those in our home. Morning looks very different from evening, but we do have kind of very specific things that happen almost every morning and things that happen almost every evening. And often, if we have a really bad day, we didn't do that morning piece before the day got started. And then I'm like, that's on me because I had other stuff going on and I didn't make sure that I went back and made sure that we got that before we actually dove into the day. So that example, like I know better. Doesn't change the fact that I skipped it and I get to live with the consequences of that.
Mhm.
Okay, so then that puts us on the like we're doing good on this tilt, right? So almost basically the last page on 164, I pulled out this quote. She says, "We want to find opportunities to reinforce the idea that our child is loved. This might be as simple as sweet little bedtime rituals, love notes slipped into a lunchbox, shared private jokes, or simply lighting up when they stumble into our bedroom early in the morning, half asleep." And for me, this really hit home because right at the time that we had read this, my kiddo had told me, well, so I did an April Fool's joke of putting note in his lunchbox on drop off day. And it was a prank. The note said, like, hope you have a great day. I have a meeting. I need you to walk home after camp or after your day. See you at home. Love, Mom. And it's far enough away that like we have never asked him to walk that far home, but it's less than a mile and he does know how to get home from there. So at first he was like having a little bit of a panic. And then he realized it was an April Fool's joke and he thought it was funny, but was still a little annoyed at me for doing such a good job of pranking him. And then he was like, next time you need to give me a real note because the good moms put a note in their kid's lunchbox. And I felt horrible because I'm like, oh my, I haven't been leaving him notes. And like, 'cause I just, like he's in middle school basically at this point, and I hadn't really thought about it. Like, and so then I was like, oh man, okay. And so I printed out some jokes and I like cut them. And then so I can like include a joke on one side and write a little note to him on the other. And then he like a week later, we were getting ready for it and something with it. And he was like, well, no one else actually gets them, but the good moms do give notes to their kids. And we're like, you bullshit. Well, they guilted me into that. No one else was getting them. Like, oh man.
So this might not surprise you, but I used to have an entire Pendaflex folder filled with themed, laminated, like jokes and riddles for their kids' lunchboxes when they went to school. And so there were like for seasons and for holidays and like all that stuff. And I used to like go through and pull them out and like rotate them between the kids and stuff like that and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it was like totally my jam when my kids were smaller. But yeah, I haven't done that stuff in ages, But it's funny because we have a thing now, they're older. So it's like you interact differently. But Liam has a service dog and all the time, like, I mean, all of us all day long, it's like, who's the best girl? You such a good girl, like the whole day. Right. And Liam, it's become this joke that she's my favorite child because of the way that we speak to her versus the way I speak to the other kids. So I was like, listen, if you want, so now when I see him, like when he walks into the room, I go, there's my good boy. Right. And it's like, so now it's become like this inside joke and he just rolls his eyes and he's like, this is not what I was asking for. And I go, you so smart. You're such a good boy. Like, and I'm like, you said it. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, don't say it if you don't want it to happen.
But inside jokes, right? Like
you have tons of those.
Yeah, and even with my kiddo, right? I mean, it was clear that he was looking for a point of connection while
Right.
he's at his all-day class. And of course I'm gonna keep doing it. And he even knows when I call him a little shit like that, that's one of kind of our inside jokes, like it's all
you should totally start signing them being like from your good mother, right?
It might do.
Like, don't rub it in today that all of your friends' mothers don't love them. Okay.
Oh man. Okay, so this tilt, like every tilt ends with a start now box. And so this one is no different, right? So start now says, make a list of situations that regularly create anxiety for your child and work in collaboration with him or her to develop a plan for proactively addressing each one. Now, I'm going to say I think that's kind of a big lift. Like these are supposed to be small lifts. And if you're making a list of everything that creates anxiety, and then now we're going to proactively collaborate to address each one, like that might be a really big lift. So I'm just going to advocate tackling one or maybe two at a time. And, like maybe the first of each month, you look at your list and work through another one or two and work on implementing that. Like make it manageable. That's all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I was like, that's going to be a long list with one of my kids, like, okay, we'll start like the stuff that's going to happen in the next 24 hours. We'll do that one.
Yeah, right.
Mm.
Okay, so tilt 9. Look at us.
We should record at 4 a.m. more often because I'm like, let's go.
I'm on it. But in fairness, I did say last week, I think we should be able to do tilt 8 because it's a pretty short one. So we'll see how the rest of them go. But all right, so we're on tilt 9. The title is Give Loud and Unapologetic voice to your reality. And just on 165, it starts off right off the top. The author acknowledges that sometimes you get criticized for openly speaking about challenges faced by both yourself and your kiddos. And before we talk about anything else in this tilt, I think it is really important to acknowledge that this is a hard one to give voice to your reality in all of its ways, can be really challenging. And there are jerks on the internet, especially on the internet, but in real life, in the real world too, who are going to have unkind things to say when you share your reality. And that's hard.
Mhm. Well, I was thinking about this too, right? This book is approximately 10 years old by the time she wrote it and everything. And just in the last 3 months, it's April 2025, when we're recording this. And I mean, you brought up in between episodes, the whole RFK autism thing happened in the last 24 hours.
Mhm.
It's becoming dangerous in some cases. It's not even a matter of people like hurting your feelings because they're assholes. It's like, it's really hard. I mean, we had Leah on a few weeks ago for Autism Acceptance Month, and it was a really big step for her to come out that publicly and speak. I mean, we had offered for her, do you want to be with a camera off? Do you want to use a pseudonym? Do you want to use pseudonyms for your kids? And her appearing on camera with her actual name, she was like, this is my act of resistance. This is the world that we're in now, that just showing up to talk about your profoundly autistic child has become an act of resistance in today's society. So there's some stuff in here where she's like, get loud on social media. And I'm like, I don't think so. Right now, things are even more difficult. So it's pretty tough, but
Yeah.
But she's got here on 165. It's in this very first section here, where this mother is talking about the fact that there was a visceral level of terror for her in being public about her kids' reality and their diagnosis and things like that. But she goes on to say here, Debbie Reber, that is, goes on to say, if we really want to change the way our children's neurodivergencies are perceived by the world, we need to start honestly sharing what's real for us and for them. And it's going to be freaking hard. But yeah, I totally agree with that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's it. She went on to say, I'm convinced it's the only way to get rid of the stigmas and shame that silence so many of us, perpetuating misunderstanding. And yeah, I mean, I think this tilt was really hard. I have a lot of mixed feelings on this tilt, and we'll talk about that. But we talk about that all the time. If you don't talk about the reality of things, if you're not honest about what the reality is, then people think they're the only ones, and that something's wrong with them for being the only ones that are feeling this or that experienced this or those kinds of things. And the only way to break that down is for more and more people to say, no, this happened to me. This happened to me. You're not the only one. It happened to me too, right? Right after that, just a little further down on the page, there's a new section. It's called The Cost of Not Speaking Up. And she mentions, right, that she Googled the definition of stigma, and it says a mark of disgrace associated with a particular circumstance, quality, or person. And like, yikes, like stigma is a mark of disgrace. Like, that sounds awful. I have to say, I was curious if that's what it still said. If you Google it, that is what comes up. It's from Oxford Languages. I personally much preferred the Merriam-Webster version, which is a set of negative or unfair beliefs that a society or group of people have about something. I was like, yeah, that feels a little more not quite so stab a knife in your heart.
I was going to say it feels a lot less scarlet letterish.
Yeah. Yeah, there's that too.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a lot. And then she talks in that same section about, and I highlighted this because I remember having this feeling, this like, if I tell someone that my kiddo is autistic, does it automatically make them a target where they're being watched differently or looked at differently? Or, if two kids are exhibiting similar behavior, is the one going to be tossed up to just like, oh, it's just a kid being a kid. And then mine's going to be like, oh, it's because they're autistic and it's a problem and it needs to be noted or documented or something. And I totally remember being like, who do I disclose this to and who don't I? Because I feel like some people, it would be beneficial for them to know, and they'll use that knowledge to their advantage to create really successful dynamics with my kid. And then some people are going to use it against my child, which is a horrendous feeling. And then the very end of this section, there's a quote there. And, I love a good mantra and a good quote that just kind of like repeats in my head. There's one coming up in this book that when we get to it, I'm going to get really excited about, that I have been using in all sorts of life examples for years. And I'm like, oh, yeah. So I like it when you kind of have one of those things that when a situation comes up, you can kind of just like a one-liner that pushes that thought away or calms voices in your head that are making you cause yourself to doubt, etc. So this one was talking about advocating for our kids. And the quote was, we're staying in our lane, we're playing small, and our kids deserve much more. And I could totally see myself in future scenarios, just my little like inside voice being like, you're playing small, take it up a notch, like, so I really liked that one.
Okay. I'm not sure that's going to play in my head, but I'll give that to you.
I'll repeat it to you if I ever, like, if I feel like you need it one day, I'll get it. I'll bust it out for you.
Okay. All right. And I'll probably tell you that I don't care. I'm happy to play small, but
Like, shut up.
That's fine. Thank you. For better or worse, I had a lot of therapy to get me here. And I'm like, yeah, well, good. I'm good where I am. Okay. So the next section called Get Honest with Yourself. And just kind of right there towards the top at 168, I pulled out this quote that I like. She said, I believe that as parents raising differently wired kids, it's critical that we take the time to explore our personal feelings around neurodiversity. Just because our kid is atypical doesn't mean we don't have our own hangups about it. And I was just like, yes. I don't know how often we see this in groups and in conversations, right? Where people, I think you and I, Meagan, are probably a little further ahead in this because we've been dealing with it and talking about it and sharing our experiences with the world now for a year. But there are a lot of people who are coming into it new and a lot of people who have been doing it for a while but haven't done the work. And it's their personal hangups around it that are really causing a lot more problems than anything else. I'm not going to say it's easy, right? It's really hard, but it's important. It's really important to take the time to unpack what those things mean to you so that you're not bringing extra baggage to the table that your kiddo just doesn't need to deal with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then she talks about getting really honest about those things, right? Uncovering and naming any negative beliefs that we may have surrounding our child's diagnoses. Even if you prefer to skip this step because you feel a tinge of guilt or shame about having those negative thoughts in the first place, do not skip this step. Denial, even with the best of intentions, doesn't serve our kids. And once you've acknowledged those unhelpful thoughts and beliefs, you'll be able to reframe them in ways that are more positive and true for you and your child. And so I loved all of that. But I will say to what you were saying, Amanda, about us, like, because we're here and we show up and we talk about this stuff and whatever, I think, and I've talked about it before, having been in the homeschool community for so long, generally speaking, you have a ton of differently wired kids in the homeschool community and parents who are sitting around at co-op while the kids are in class and they're chatting about this stuff. So I think for me, I won't say it's easy, but if you're looking for a way to start doing this work and start breaking it down, surrounding yourself with a community that's really neurodivergent affirming and doing that. Like, we had a parent not that long ago say something to us about I love how freely you people talk about this stuff. And it's true when you're around other people that have taken that and they're just like a little bit further ahead on the journey, it kind of helps. Maybe you can grab on a little bit and be like, I'm coming, and just lift up in that journey as well.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So then the next section, Meagan kind of referenced this a little earlier on, but the section is called Speak Out on Social Media. And on page 170, she's talking about this. And I think for me, generally speaking, we speak out. This is much more common and much more socially acceptable than it was 10 years ago. And I say 10 years ago because that's when this book was being researched and written, right? It's been published for 6 years, but she said herself it had taken years to come to fruition. So, and I think, in 2015, we were not sharing articles about parenting or sharing things and being like, oh my God, can you believe RFK is such an asshole and so uneducated? we weren't putting those things out. And these days, I think it's much more common to just hit share and share those kinds of things with your group. But I do still think it is a powerful way to make sure people see varying opinions and ideas. Just because it's more common and it's more socially acceptable to quickly share an article, and everything nowadays has an easy share to Facebook or share to Instagram button, which it didn't 10 years ago, but now it's like so easy to just share it with people. It's still useful. It's still powerful to make sure that other people see that. The algorithms control so much of what people see. And if they're not in the same boat or they're not in the same support groups, it might be, a grandparent that's open to reading it and it just wasn't going to come across their algorithm anyway. So share it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say some days I do this thing and some days I definitely don't because I'm just not up for it.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, I'm just not up for any potential backlash or screaming into the wind or whatever it is. But yeah, it's powerful and we should do it. And okay, I got it, but yeah, it is. It's exhausting.
No. Yeah, totally. In the next section, it's called Disclose in a Way That's Right for Your World. And I thought this was interesting. I did like, right kind of in the beginning on page 171, she's talking about like how to share the specifics on a need to know basis. She uses an example, which she often does in the book. And she's talking about someone who said like the nosy neighbor doesn't need to know your kid's diagnosis, right? But a new coach or a new teacher or something like that, they probably do need to know because your kid's going to be working with them and with other kids, and it helps them better understand what's going on. And so keeping this idea of, sharing with the people who need to know because they regularly interact with your kiddo. I think, I think it's useful. For me, I kind of felt like this approach feels less open and honest than the rest of the tilt was advocating for. And so I don't know. I just felt like a little like, okay, so be out there, be loud, share it unapologetically, tell everyone, be out there talking about all of these things. And then it kind of wraps up with like, but don't share it with anyone who doesn't need to know. And I was like, oh, that's.
Well, and the interesting thing, I will freely admit, I put my notes in this document very quickly after taking my nap before we recorded. And I didn't put this in my notes, but just listening to you made me think of it, talking about the nosy neighbor. So did you see in the news within the last week, there was a 17-year-old autistic boy who was killed by the police? Did you see this?
I think I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's been a lot lately,
right.
But
I
that seems to.
I can't keep up with the horrendous news, right? No. But okay, so it was this 17-year-old boy. He was an autistic child. His name was Victor Perez. And he was dysregulated. He had a knife at the time. He was in his own backyard, right? And the police were called, I think, by a neighbor, from what I understand. And he was shot. He was on life support. They finally took him off life support and he has died. So in a way, it's like, we're in this place where that asshole nosy neighbor kind of also needs to know. It might not change anything depending on who the neighbor is. But in this case, it was like this child probably wasn't a threat to the neighbors or anything else. And this was not what was needed in that scenario. And this 17-year-old's life has been cut short and this family is now grieving. So gosh, it's hard, right? It's so hard to know who to tell and what to do. But like maybe your neighbors do need to know, even if they don't interact with your kids, so that if they see something that seems out of sorts, they're not calling the police and it ends like this in some cases.
Yeah. But I don't know. It's the way things are right now. I feel like in some cases, it wouldn't make any difference at all, except maybe make it worse. I don't know. That's, yeah.
Yeah, it's a hard situation, but yeah. Okay, so the next note that I have here is in a section that's titled Disclose in a Way That's Right for Your World. And she's got a thing here that says if it's the diagnosis itself that you're uncomfortable with and you feel safer talking in broader strokes, that works too. And she gives examples like, my daughter is incredibly energetic and never stops moving. Or my son can get really upset when his schedule is disrupted. Or my daughter is working way ahead of grade level. And yeah, I get that. But for me, I feel like the only time that I've been able to get accommodation or understanding is when you state the diagnosis, and it needs to be a diagnosis that people recognize the name of and think they understand. Odds are good they don't understand it, but they think they have some inkling of understanding into it. And the best example I can give to this is before my youngest was diagnosed autistic, he had a sensory processing disorder diagnosis, which may or may not now be accurate. It's like there's so much gray area between some of these things that it's really hard to determine. And, you know, we would go to a restaurant, for example, and his food needs to be prepared in a very specific way. And when you're trying to explain to somebody that he has sensory processing disorder and you need this thing, they're looking at you like you have 10 heads. As soon as you say, my kiddo's autistic, it's like, whew, I gotcha. What do you need? And I don't think this person truly understands autism, but they recognize the name and that the expectation is that they should be helpful. And so I think when you're just like, my kid has oodles of energy, people are going to be like, they're a kid. Of course they have oodles of energy. Like, what are you talking about? Or, you know, my kid is working way ahead of grade level. They're going to be like, listen to this asshole mother that's just like bragging about how smart her kid is. In my mind, I feel like without the diagnosis, unfortunately, you don't get as much traction, which stinks, but it's true. We talked about that way back when Jonathan Mooney was on with us in season 1. And I was talking about the fact like that I have to explain to somebody that like a banana cannot have any spots on it for my child, like no spots whatsoever. And he's like, yeah, but why as a society do we have to pathologize ourselves in order to get a banana that suits our needs? Like, why can't you just get a banana that works for you? And it's like, I get that, but at least in American culture, I don't know how it is everywhere else, but at least in American culture, it's like, for fuck's sake, just take the banana I gave you. Like, why are you so difficult? You know? But then if you're like, oh, my kid's autistic, it's like, I will find you the best banana there ever was. Like, I don't, it's just the way my experience has been. Maybe others have not had that experience, but for me, I felt like that advice wasn't going to get you very far, unfortunately.
Yeah, I guess I do think, you know, it probably depends on where you are and the level of knowledge in that place and space. I would imagine that some of these things would go over, some of her examples would go over better if I was back visiting my family in like rural Iowa and positioning it that way instead of using more medical jargon kind of stuff. But you know, I could be wrong. I'm not going to go try it because they're not people. So I'm not going to try it either way. We're just going to avoid it as much as possible. Full stop. So Miss Till, it does wrap up with this Start Now box. So on 172, she says, commit to combating negative stigmas by honestly sharing what's happening in your world with one new person this week. I was like, that's an interesting one. I'm not sure. I'd have to pick a really random person, I think, because I'm pretty open about things that are going on. So that might be weird, but that's just me. I'm sure other people who are reading this book or following along with this are like, oh, yeah, I've got someone I can tell. Or they have to listen to it again. You're going to share more. I'm sure.
I think I'm going to have a lot of that this week because we're going to Czech Republic for the week. And I emailed the place where we're staying after I made the reservation just to let them know that we have a service dog, blah, blah, blah. And they were so sweet. The lady messaged me back from reception at the place and said, no problem. We'll make sure everybody knows, blah, blah, blah. She said, but I just need you to know that like culturally here, it's not very common. So she said, if you want, when you get here, come to the front desk and we'll help you write a letter in a native language that explains, and we can print the letter and like put a copy of her ID card all with it so that anybody who stops you has something in the native language and you don't have any language barriers, which I thought was so stinking nice, right? Like ridiculous. But like, I think I have a lot of explaining coming up for me in the next week.
Yeah, it could be an intense week. Good luck with that.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
Great. So yeah, that it's going to, I thought that was like really sweet. I was like, well, if people are like you, we're off to a good start here. So I'm excited.
That's amazing.
All right. I'm freaking really proud of us because we're 2 tilts in and we have like maybe 10 minutes to get through this last one, but I think we can do it, right? We're good. Like we might see the sunrise in this window behind me soon, but we're getting there. Okay. Before we do our final tilt, If you were not aware, we offer coaching. In fact, one of the topics we offer coaching on is homeschooling neurodivergent kids. So if you are looking for support, guidance that's super specific to you, I mean, I know for me, it's one thing to show up and listen to an episode and you're like, yeah, but my kid is different because XYZ. And any parent can say that.
Yeah.
Everybody's kid is just a little bit different. Your circumstance is a little bit different. Your needs are a little bit different. And so it's like, I get it, but now I'm trying to figure out how this works specific to my needs. So come, let's talk about it. In addition to talking about neurodivergence and homeschooling, we have coaching sessions like Amanda does, curriculum palooza. Like, you want to talk curriculum, go talk to Amanda. I will be completely useless. Go talk to Amanda. You want to figure out how to navigate the California charter system, go talk to Amanda. You want to talk world schooling and figure out how we're in the Czech Republic this week, come talk to us and figure that one out. We're more than happy to help. We are not millionaires, either one of us, by any stretch of the imagination. So if you're trying to figure out how you do it on a budget, we'd be happy to help. So we have a whole bunch of different topics that we offer coaching on. You can book sessions with either of us individually, or we can all hang out together. Every time you say, when you do the coaching bit, Amanda, and you say a one-on-one session or a two-on-one session, my brain goes to like really dirty places when you say a two-on-one session. I'm just saying. But yes, we do offer two-on-one sessions if that's what that's your jam. I've been hanging out with you too often, Amanda. That's where my brain goes. So anyway, there's a link.
Not even sorry. Not even. Everyone needs a little bit of that in their life every once in a while.
There's a link in our show notes that'll take you to our Calendly. It's ridiculously easy to set up a session. All of our availability is there. You bing, bang, boom. You set up a session. It's done. We'll chat with you in advance about what your needs are so that we can really buckle down during our session and make sure that we get your needs covered and all that good stuff. So yeah, come hang out with us. We would love it.
Yeah, sure. They're always fun.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to do this. We've got this. Okay. So tilt 10. And the first time the entire book that we managed 3 tilts. Okay. Practice relentless self-care. All right. Now, before we say anything else, we have talked about self-care and what a complicated topic it is in previous episodes on more than one occasion. I know you, Meagan, have shared how even talking about the importance of self-care makes you feel like a little stressed and like you're failing in some ways. And I know that like I personally definitely avoid specific aspects of the whole self-care culture because for me, it just feels like another way to shame women who can't do it all and have it all at the same time, like, so with that out there, let's dive into a tilt on relentless self-care.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, and to that point, like you said, to shame women who can't do it all and have it all, we're at least expressing those feelings. I wonder how other genders feel. Like maybe there's dads out there that feel like they're not managing it all, but it's never been socially acceptable for them to say that. Or, you know what I mean? Like maybe the fact that we're having the conversation and saying that we're struggling with it is a luxury in and of itself. I'd be curious to get feedback from other people who are like, I'm not even there yet. I can't even admit that it's a struggle yet because, it would be shameful or whatever the case, or that they might feel that it's shameful. We don't think it's shameful. You can live it. But
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I could totally see that being like wrapped up in the whole toxic masculinity thing. And like that definitely feels like it's backsliding way too much. So yeah, that it is interesting.
Right. I hadn't thought of it until you said that, but I was like, that could be right.
Yeah. I mean, it's that thing. There's like a whole wellness TikTok culture aimed at women and self-care, but it's not just a women's issue. And so, yeah, it's a good point. Okay. So back to the book specifically. On page 174, Debbie, talks about a lot of different kinds of self-care in this tilt. But she starts with this idea from the book, The Miracle Morning. Have you ever heard of this book, Meagan?
I haven't, but I got really invested when she was talking about it.
Oh,
Lord.
Of course.
Is that shocking to you?
No, because I was like, all right. So, quote, the book encourages people to consciously set aside time first thing for 6 different activities: exercise, meditating, writing, reading, visualizing, and affirming. And she talks about how she and her son both started doing this and they feel really good about it. And for me, this falls under that category of like, no thanks, right? Most of this stuff is stuff that does not appeal to me anyway. And then I just feel bad about myself because I don't do self care right. It's like, oh, well, you're supposed to care for, this is self care. Make sure you take the time every morning to meditate and exercise and do a little bit of journaling. I'm like, I don't want to do any of those things. I don't want to stop and visualize and affirm myself before I get out of bed. I just want to like manage to get out of bed and go make a cup of coffee. Like, but then I feel like, yeah, I failed before I even got my day started because I didn't even start my day right.
Hmm. I could see that. I found myself sitting there going like, do you do all 6 of these things on one day? Or is it like a rotation? Like I spent some time on this and I was like, this sounds interesting. But then I was thinking, I think it would be a struggle for me to get my kids to sit there and visualize and stuff like that. I mean, we've done yoga with Adrian 30-day challenge. And I know darn well during the meditation at the end that they're all just like thinking about whatever they want to, like they're totally not meditating. You know what I mean? Like, so like, I don't know, that might be a stretch, but I did find it intriguing enough to spend some extra time on it while we were reading, which I didn't think would surprise you.
No, that does not. I'm like visualizing, affirming, yeah, of course you're all in on that bullshit. Um, which of course you're welcome to be.
We don't judge.
Yeah, except each other. We judge each other. Right? You can do that with friends. You should do it kindly. All right. On page 175, I pulled out this quote. It says, I realize that even contemplating the concept of self-care can result in a variety of reactions, including eye rolls from those who consider it a new age concept alongside balance and self-interest, guilt from those who practice it but feel they shouldn't focus on so much energy on themselves, and even shame from those who don't take care of themselves at all and realize that neglecting their needs isn't doing them or their family any favors. And it just kind of made me wonder, like, well, where do you think you fall? I'm not sure that any of those really describe me, but I guess I'm closest to like guilt more that I am not able to take the time for myself as much as I want to. And then I guess when I do take it, sometimes I feel guilty, like, oh, I have so many other things that I should be doing, or I'm taking time away from family time for self-care time. So that is hard.
Yeah. I think guilt is a big one. And I think also not only the guilt about maybe not being amazing at self-care or not taking the time for self-care, but then when you do take the time for self-care, we've talked on the podcast before about this line of crap that especially women have been fed, that our worth is tied to our productivity. So when you are taking time to just exist and be and do something for yourself, you're not being productive in the way that society values. And so then there's guilt wrapped up in that too, which is really challenging. I feel like I did like some of the examples that she gave, which we'll get to in a little bit. But there are things that like I've done better with, that some of the examples that she gives of just small things. I'm like, okay, I'm doing that. Okay, I'm doing that. And so
Yeah.
I do like when self-care is defined in more realistic ways.
Yeah, exactly. And so the next section is called Getting Real About Self-Care. And she really makes a point on page 176 of defining it as intentional, meaning something you consciously choose to do because it's good for your mind, body, and or soul. And 2, it's just for you. And in reading this, like for me, I totally agree with you. There are things in here that she brings up that I feel like don't often get brought up in self-care or as self-care, that are really little things that are like, oh yeah. And so for me, it made me realize that my morning coffee is bizarrely a really important part of self-care. And when I used to work outside of the home, I would often go get like a real coffee. I'd like a good mocha from a place, not a Starbucks mocha, a good mocha. And those, so I would treat myself to that. And it was a moment, a thing. And I don't do that anymore because I'm not out of the house that often, especially not in the morning like that. But I do drink Blue Mountain coffee every morning that I'm home, and I often travel with it to make sure that I still get it because I really love good coffee. But when I'm home, I have these stupidly expensive mugs in an assortment of colors. They're Le Creuset mugs to give you an idea of how stupidly expensive we're talking about. And I like it's a moment like in the morning, I go and I open up the cabinet and I look at all of the colors and I decide which color I feel like drinking out of. And I like take that mug and it's like, it's a whole thing and it's for me and picking that specific mug and the color, like it feels good. And then I enjoy that cup of coffee. I only get one these days, so it's a good thing. Um, but it's this really intentional way of starting my morning, and I miss it when I'm traveling or, if we're in a hotel or something like that, and I'm just choking down a cup of hotel coffee. It's definitely not that moment and that way of starting. And I was, oh, I hadn't really realized how much my coffee is self-care.
Yeah. I mean, I noticed it in some of the examples that she gave where she talked about like, okay, fine. She's working on her tilt parenting work, but she'll bike to a cafe and work in a cafe and listen to a podcast that's hers on the way. So she's getting some physical activity. She's getting some fresh air. She's out and about. She's getting a nice cup of coffee. Sometimes she'll invite a friend to co-work with her. So she's got some body doubling going on, whatever that might be. And for me, like when I beat myself up over self-care, it's because sometimes I don't acknowledge really small steps like that. And so I think that's a big thing. Like when we got back to Portugal after we were in England for a while, the weather had gotten nice. And the first thing I did was go down to this store that's by us and I bought a tablecloth that kind of has that vinyl-y, like it's fabric, but it's water resistant. I don't know what sort of magical chemicals they use to do that, right? And so I bought one of those so that if we put it down on the ground in the park, it doesn't absorb any moisture from the ground. Like the ground would have to be like really saturated for it to come through the tablecloth. And so that's been like my thing. Like if I'm reading for book club, our book club for the podcast, if I'm reading for book club that I teach, I'll take my book and go down to the park and I get fresh air. Now, the funny thing is fresh air and the sun are like so relaxing that when I get back, oftentimes I need a nap. And so I'm like,
Double the self-care.
exactly. And I'm like, well, there goes my productivity because I just zonked out on the couch now for an hour when I got back. But yeah, like I've been making more intentional choices like that. And so that felt a little bit better. There's still plenty of things that I beat myself up that I should be doing that I'm not doing. But, I'll take my little victory. I'll take it.
Yeah. Well, you should. All right. So the next section is called Defend Against Your Self-Care Roadblocks. So on page 178, she's talking about getting distracted and how to identify time wasters that prevent, in this case, she's talking specifically her kiddo from completing projects. And you'll be shocked to know that I'm torn on this. So on the one hand, yes, we all have things that distract us, and learning how to block those out so that we can do or achieve or finish the things that matter to us is important. I'm not going to pretend that that's not the case. Like a big thing for me was making sure I learned to put my phone at night. So I don't have a separate Kindle. I use the Kindle app on my phone. And I read on it at night because I have problems with my hands. It's hard for me to hold a book open, especially later in the day. So I had to learn, if I want to take the time to read before bed and then go to sleep, make sure I put it in like the do not disturb mode so none of the notifications are popping up. And that way I'm not scrolling and surfing and doing things on my phone. I'm really focusing on reading, enjoying myself until I'm ready to go to sleep. So I do get that. But also, I would say that in some regards, being open to being sidetracked by things you enjoy is self-care. Kind of like you were saying, there's this like big push that we have to always be productive. We have to always be accomplishing things. Even in self-care, you're supposed to be knitting, or you're supposed to be taking up needlework, or you're supposed to be adult coloring, like you're supposed to be being productive with your self-care. And maybe it's okay to just allow your self-care to be undirected, like frittering away of time.
If you're watching the video, yawned like 10 times while you were saying that. It's not that I'm bored by what you're saying. I'm just like,
It's really late, and I'm trying not to yawn, but then I also look like a sociopath who doesn't yawn when someone else yawns, and so it's a whole situation over here.
I know. And I was telling Amanda we're going. It's 5 a.m. We're almost done recording, and then I'm gonna go take a nap. But we have to go to not have to. I signed up for this thing, and this mom was so amazing to organize an English speaking tour for us. But we're going to the garbage incineration factory here in Vienna, which the building looks like something out of like it's like a hybrid of like Dr. Seuss and Willy Wonka. And so I'm really excited about it. And there were so many people that they had to split the tour into two groups. There was a Monday group and a Friday group. And the Monday group said it's amazing. So I'm really looking forward to it. But I'm like, I'm going to be so tired watching them burn trash. But it'll be good. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So on page 179, she has a list of obstacles that regularly prevent self-care. And I just thought they were those things. Like, again, you don't always have to be productive, but it is important to be aware of whether or not you're letting these things prevent you from achieving the things you want to achieve, whatever that looks like. So she's got going to bed too late, mindlessly wasting time on social media, keeping your cell phone on at all times and responding to every notification, constantly running behind schedule, making commitments to everyone but yourself, and tying yourself up with volunteer obligations. I just like, oh, I think probably the vast majority of us can say yes to at least a couple of those things.
Mhm. I think too that there's a bit of like, it's a huge character trait for ADHD people to go to bed late. There's
Mhm.
both that our brains start working later in the day, and also there's that need for alone time at night at the end of the day. That's like, I think many primary caregivers feel that because they've been taking up time with other people all day, but then ADHD people, I think, tend to feel it a bit more. And so there's a bit of that too, that I'm like, wow, for a differently wired book, we're like, okay, I just feel like I'm just putting that out there. Like, that's kind of how I'm wired, but sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's totally true and totally fair, right? Like it again, it's that thing. You have to think about it for yourself and how it applies to you specifically. Because I know for me, I do go to bed late, but I also sleep in. That's the schedule I have. I'm allowed to have that schedule and it works well for me. I have one of those sleep tracker rings that yells at me every night that I fell asleep too quickly because I read until I'm ready to go to sleep. And when I'm ready to go to sleep, I'm asleep within 2 minutes. Like it's not a like it's a put the phone down, curl up with my blanket and I'm out. I don't think that's a problem.
Yeah. Oh, speaking before when you were saying about holding your phone to read your book, have you seen that thing that mounts to your headboard that holds your Kindle and it has a clicker?
I haven't seen it. No.
I swear before winter I'm getting one because then you can like be under your blankie and your Kindle is there and you just hit a remote under your blanket and then it'll turn the page for you. So I was thinking about that when you were like, it's challenging to hold the book and it's on like one of those telescoping arms. You like
Yeah.
big alligator clip it to like your headboard
Yeah.
or whatever. And then it comes up and over. I see people in my reading groups with them and I'm like, one day I shall own that thing. So anyway,
Interesting. I'm a side sleeper, so I'd have to put it on something like next to my bed or maybe on the side of the bed to come up. But
and
yeah.
then just click away.
Okay, so wrapping up this right on page 182, she wraps up with talking about building in accountability. So you really get in your self-care. And
I
again,
needed another job. This is great.
yeah. Well, it's that thing. I'm like, for me, like, okay, look, if it works for you and it makes you feel good, go for it. I'm in a small Facebook group with a friend who literally created an accountability Facebook group. So she would put the things out there every week and like it holds her accountable. And she wants that. And I'm like, by all means, I am not going to do that, but I will be here and I will read what you said you're going to do and cheer you on if you need it.
Mhm.
For me, it just makes me feel worse. It adds stress and pressure to my life. And I'm just like, that does not help with my self care efforts in any way, shape, or form. I don't need a checklist. I don't need someone being like, did you? Like, I did the best I could. Thank you very much.
Makes sense. So that ends this tilt. We've made it, right? That ends this tilt with the start now box, which says commit to doing at least one small act of self-care every single day moving forward. You've got this. And I'm like, okay, the way she defines self-care, I think even for me, who admittedly is stressed about self-care and say, I suck at it, I think it's doable the way she defines it. So it's
Yeah,
just, I'm
that's it.
going to have to remember to do it because it's not always intuitive. But yeah, I like it.
Yeah. The way she defines it, I think it's definitely doable to do every day. And I think most of us are probably doing it in some small way, just because I think we'd lose our minds if we weren't. But maybe just being aware of it so that we can take some of that pressure and stress off of ourselves with it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, yeah, that pretty much wraps us up. So before you go, we just want to quickly say if you're enjoying the show, please take a moment and leave a review wherever you listen or watch. Like it or not, these things are so dependent on algorithms these days, which means our ability to reach new people and help more folks, it's just it also relies on the algorithm. There's just no getting around it, right? So if you would please just take a minute, leave a 5-star review, say a few nice words wherever you're listening. Every like and review really does help us just reach out and find those people who are looking for other like-minded homeschoolers. So we
Mm-hmm.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Absolutely. So thanks for tuning in. We made it through 3 tilts. Look at us. Maybe we'll do 3 again next week. No promises. And we're not going to guilt ourselves into doing anything. And we hope you took something away from today's episode. I am going to go take a nap. And we hope you have an awesome rest of your day. Happy homeschooling.
Yeah. Have a great one.